March 9th.
When the la-la hits your lyrics, just split your head so hard that your hat can't fit you. Either I'm with you or against you. Format bench you. Back through that maze I sent you. Talking to the rap inventor.
What's up, YouTube,
with the
man? It's
game
your
type,
man,
that flame
ayroq,
right. Spell my
man.
name.
And I apologize for that. Today we're going to get into Why is Hip Hop So Whack, Volume 3, the East Coast Bias Edition. So, big shout outs to everybody out there that's watching my videos, that's supporting what I'm doing, my hustle and stuff like that. So I know I'm going to get a lot of comments on this because nobody on the East Coast thinks they bias. You know what I mean? Everybody in the world knows the East Coast be biased about stuff, but they bias about baseball, they bias about hip hop, they bias about a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? Because look, the majority of that stuff, it starts in the East and dwindles out across the country and stuff like that. And I respect that. You know what I mean? And first and foremost, man, I love New York artists, Boston artists, Philly artists, Virginia artists, DC artists, Pittsburgh artists. I like a lot of the East Coast stuff. You know what I mean? I came up on this West Coast-ish, you know what I mean? I just understand it more than East Coast stuff. So, but I think it's relevant to the conversation that there in the 90s, there was a lot of East Coast bias. And this form of music cannot, it can't survive with the bias. You've got to allow a voice to every type of genre, whether it's the West Coast, whether it's the East Coast, whether it's down south, whether it's Midwest, whether it's Europe. You know what I mean? Like, cats forget, Slick Rick was out of the UK, and he's one of our forefathers. You know what I mean? Hip hop can be done by women, it can be done by gay people, it can be done by anything. You know what I mean? So you can't have that bias in there, and a lot of that. Well, let me just get into what I was saying. So, first off, if you guys get a chance, go out and get this. This is the XXL 250 greatest songs from 1990 to 1999. Just got everything in this joint. You got Eminem, you got Outkast, you got Naughty by Nature, Busta Rhymes, Dre, Snoop, Biggie, Mobb Deep, the whole 9 yards. And I don't really buy this stuff anymore because it's usually got like Lady Gaga on the cover or something booty like that. But you get a chance, like go on out and get that. That's just hotness. Like I said, I don't support that stuff no more. But when I see some hotness, I gotta jump on it and stuff like that. So East Coast bias. Like I said, hip hop shouldn't be contained or anything like that. But the majority in the 90s, I made a video before about technology, how technology hurt hip hop. Well, here's a vice versa to that. It's like technology, the lack of technology hurt hip hop back in the day. Because it's like the only way that we were getting our news about hip hop, because there was no shows or there's no books or in a library about hip hop. We were getting it from these. We were getting the XL and the Source magazines and stuff like this. These were our Bibles for hip hop, for clothes, for whose albums was going to drop, the whole 9 yards. But they were based in New York. So Source magazine, XXL, they were based in New York. So in the beginning they were they weren't biased at all. They just because the East Coast music was just like, #1. And then when West Coast music came around, and you can't deny that in the early 90s, the West Coast was on top. And it was like the East Coast magazines and the outlets was just like, we don't care. We're not giving you guys the respect. We're going to have these award shows that we're hosting, and we're not going to honor Eazy-E or Too Short or E40 or Snoop and Dre or anything like that. We're gonna give these awards to you know, AZ and, you know, the Lost Boys and, you know, Mr. Cheeks and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Where that's where you got the majority of that East Coast, West Coast beef. Because the West Coast was just like tired of like, you know, like I said, putting in all that work and selling all these albums, and they was just not getting no props. I mean, to this day, E40 has never been on the cover of a Source magazine. There's about 300 covers to the Source, and E40's never graced the cover. And it's like, dude, you can say what you want, but E40's like sushi, dude. It's like, he's an acquired taste, and you either love him or you hate him. You know what I mean? And like out here on the West, we love that type of stuff. You know what I mean? He you know, he put in his work. You know what I mean? But he can't. I mean, you can give the Source cover to like Soulja Boy or like you know, like Ja Rule, but you wouldn't give it to, you know, 40. That's just crazy. That's that bias I was talking about. So now you might look at me and say, yo, that dude is biased because he's from the West. You know what I mean? But I got proof on how in the 90s, the biasness just like, you know, kind of messed up hip hop and stuff like that. So what I have here is, I'm an avid collector. Do not mess with me. Do not F with me, because I will go to school on you on old school 90s hip hop. You dig? So what I have here is I have a Source magazine from January of 1998. Some of y'all cats looking at this wasn't even born back in the day. You know what I mean? But this was the 100th issue of the Source, and it had the greatest MCs, the greatest 100 albums, the greatest 100 songs, the whole 9 yards, right? So in this issue, right here, you have the 100 greatest singles, right? And right here, you had, wow, 100 greatest albums, right? So you can, if you guys get a chance, snag this up on eBay, because, you know, this is a great tool. You know what I mean? But here's the point I'm trying to make. So in the 100 greatest albums, Dr. Dre has 6 of the 100 greatest albums, right? No other producer, per this magazine, has had more all-time great albums than Dr. Dre. But who do you think that they put as the #1 producer of all time? Now get ready. This is that East Coast bias thing. They had Puff Daddy, okay? Now, I'm not lying. And then they had the audacity to say Dre is #2 tied with Premier. Okay, in the same issue, right? With the 100 greatest albums of all time, Dre had 6, more than any other producer, right? Puffy had 2, and he didn't even produce these. You know, they had Life After Death, and they had Ready to Die in there, and he didn't even produce those albums. He was an executive producer. And for you, those of you who don't know what an executive producer is, because I've been in the game, I've been an executive producer. An executive producer is a person that puts their stamp on a beat, that may let a producer, like, you know, do his little production, and, you know, the production's like doom 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 doom, and the executive producer comes in and say, well, maybe it should go doom 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 doom. Okay, cool. So now he's got a production, an executive producer credit on a track, because he's overseeing the producers and pretty much pocketing the the expenses for the album and so on. So that's, you know, one of the reasons why, you know, you got that whole East Coast bias. But I've just gone over 10 minutes. We're gonna get into part 2 of this. Holla at your boy. Part 2's coming. Holla at your boy, West Coast all day.
Your lyrics just split ya, head so hard that your hat can't fit ya. Either I'm with ya or against ya. Format bent ya, back through that maze I